Good morning. This is the re-recording of the April 14th Allen Avenue Unitarian Universalist Church worship service since our tech did not quite function as it was supposed to this morning and we were not able to get any audio on our recording. So this is a service entitled To Be a Wetland, with me, Reverend Tara, preaching, and I will share some music as well. It will not be from our choir, unfortunately, but I'll give you a little taste of what we heard for music today. So, Reverend Tara here in my office at 524 Allen Avenue. In our time together today, we will reflect on wetlands, powerful ecosystems that detoxify water and protect us and other living creatures. And we'll ponder how we might serve as wetlands in our own communities and our own lives. So come and arrive here in this space, this funny tech space where we are connected, though we are not together. Arrive and know that you are welcome and that you are joyfully called to worship. Our reading today is from the book Beyond Welcome, and this is an essay by the Reverend Elizabeth Wen. It's a selection of that essay. So in the words of Elizabeth Wen, she writes, Ricardo Levins Morales writes, liberation struggles are about restoring power to people whose power has been taken away, which is also a definition of trauma healing. Be a wetland. Detoxify what is upstream. Pass on liberation. I'm no ecologist, but I know what Ricardo meant. Whatever goes into a wetland comes out less toxic, more healed, less poisonous. I know that wetlands buffer plants and animals and ecosystems and people against the extremes of hurricanes and floods and monsoons. Be a wetland. Let whatever touches you or your community be transformed to cause less harm, less harm, less harm. Wetlands are organic and natural and fragile and fallible, strong and tenacious, and also far too easy to uproot, pollute, destroy. None of us should ever receive pain or harm or violence. We should not have to be wetlands. We should not have to fight like hell not to pass it on. And in the world we live in, we are hurt. We are in pain. We survive violence. And I want a way through that means I don't pass it on. The deepest growing edge of my spirituality, Wen writes, is my effort to grapple with my own ability to harm others, to survive harm, to be the wetland that I and all of us should never have to be. Only healing heals. And even on our worst days, we can know another world is coming. May we be the ones who do not pass on pain. May we be wetlands. Therein ends the reading. And now I'm going to share my screen so that you can hear the gorgeous song that we heard our choir sing this morning. It's called I Am Your Mother, and the music is by Mark Miller, and the text I can't remember, but you'll see in a second. Let's see here. Sharing my screen. Excellent. And I'm going to make it full screen. life is to cherish. Care or we perish. That I believe we all know to be true. About a month ago, I went running with a friend on the Eastern Trail. We parked in the small lot off of Black Point Road in Scarborough, a place I hadn't been in years, right where the trail stretches across the marshes as the many tiny rivulets from the Nonsuch River make their way to the Saco Bay. It's a breathtaking landscape. Its wetland features different from the seaside just a few miles down the road, and that particular evening, the sun was sinking low, illuminating the glorious meeting of earth and water, with colors words do not do justice describing. As we pulled into the dirt parking lot, I was shocked by the new housing development off Black Point Road that I hadn't remembered seeing last time I went down that way. It had been years. I was struck. It stuck out in contrast with the land and other dwellings around it. It seemed so close to invading this ecosystem. My friend and I joked that we hoped they had good flood insurance, things you think about as a young adult in this climate-changed world. And I have been thinking about this image since then, and the ways I was struck by the beauty of this wetland landscape. Growing up in southern Maine with an annual trip to the Rocky Mountains to visit my mom in my adult life, I have been spoiled by beauty, and I have high standards for natural beauty. The ocean has my whole heart. And so I am sometimes struck at how taken aback I am by the unique and particular pull that marshes and bogs too have on my heartstrings. And wetland ecosystems offer much more to the world than beauty. The EPA describes wetlands, including marshes, swamps, bogs, and similar areas that are periodically saturated with or covered by water, as providing food and habitat for a diverse array of plants and animals, acting as buffers to flooding and erosion and serving as key links in the global water cycle. An EPA report on the environment describes that because of their sponge-like ability to absorb water, wetlands can slow the momentum of floodwaters or of a coastal storm surge. Wetlands' highly developed root systems hold the soil in place and filter out pollutants, naturally improving water quality. Wetlands are among the most biologically productive ecosystems in the world. Their microbial activity enriches the water and soil with nutrients. Plant growth in wetlands provides a sink for many chemicals, including atmospheric carbon. Wetlands act as filters. The water that enters them comes out cleaner and healthier. And they act as buffers. The plants and animals and ecosystems surrounding them are protected from the effects of storms and extreme weather. Elizabeth Wen, in the beautiful reading I shared before the music, she asks us to be wetlands, to detoxify, transform, harm, and not pass it on. It's an amazing, creative, and expansive ask, and it's had me thinking about what it would mean, what it would look like for us as Unitarian Universalists to see part of our calling as becoming the human version of wetlands. There are two distinct pursuits I see for us, wetland people of faith, that align with both the roles these ecosystems play in the natural world, as well as with our Unitarian Universalist values. The first is the call to filter, and second, the call to buffer. Wetlands act as filters. The water that enters them comes out cleaner and healthier than it was when it arrived. How might we be filters, leaving our relationships, interactions, communities more healed, more just, more whole than we found them? In our patterns of communication here at church, in our families, work, and other circles, we can choose to interact with one another directly, kindly, talking to instead of about each other, taking in patterns of communication that don't serve the community and transforming them into healthy ones that allow us to live our values in the ways we interact with one another. In the institutions we participate in, we can keep our eyes and ears open for patterns of white supremacy culture and institutionalized racism and call them out when we notice them. We can pay attention to the ways in which racism and white supremacy are intertwined with almost everything we do and make a commitment to noticing and rooting it out of our practices to the best of our abilities. When we name and discuss and work to filter out these dynamics and patterns, we leave our organizations more healed, more just, and more whole. We can choose to eliminate harmful words and phrases from our language, even if it requires us to center the impact they had that we didn't realize over our good intentions, and sit with the discomfort of letting something go. We can choose right speech, right action, and filter out hurt and harm and violence. Wetlands also act as buffers. The plants and animals and ecosystems surrounding them are protected from the effects of storms and extreme weather. We can be buffers too. We can act as intervening bystanders when we witness harm in our communities. We can be the one safe adult in the life of a struggling child. We can choose as a community to work on becoming a microcosm of the world we dream of, so that we know what it feels like, that world we are working to build. As I mentioned earlier, which beloved tech folks weren't able to catch, and that was in our announcements, and we'll find another way to get those to you folks. But as we discussed a little bit earlier and was on our announcements sheet printed, our congregation A2U2 has been asked to learn more about what it might look like to participate in organizing work to support transgender individuals and families relocating to Maine from unsafe states. In essence, we are being called to be wetlands, to do the work and education it will take to filter out transphobia and anti-trans violence from our community, church, city, state, so that we can be a safer place for folks to land and be held in the care they deserve. To use the privilege we have to act as buffers on the individual, interactional, and institutional levels. How might we be a buffer, whether through legislative action, individual support, personal risk-taking, and harbor one another in the face of state-sanctioned violence that is the reality of this country? Life is to cherish. Life is to cherish. And these are questions deeply worthy of our discernment. A critical part, too, of this "you use as wetlands" framework that we have yet to touch on is the call to consider the fragility of the wetland ecosystem. When reminds us that they are organic and natural and fragile and fallible, strong and tenacious, and also far too easy to uproot, pollute, destroy. We are fragile too, strong and tenacious, and also fragile. We must consider the fragility of our own ecosystems as we decide how we will live into the call that our faith and our values place on our hearts. We must protect ourselves too from violence, and we must do our own healing work in order to function well in our lives and not pass along the harm we have inherited or received. We know, as the old saying goes, that hurt people hurt people. That violence and supremacy cultures ripple out into communities and affect us all. That secrets and abuse within family systems, congregational systems, and really every other kind of human system, that they have intergenerational effects, and we are not immune to those effects, no matter how deeply we work to create a better world for others. We must care with deep compassion for our own fragile ecosystems by holding firm to our boundaries of how we will and how we will not be treated. We must learn the art of knowing when no is a complete sentence. And we must keep at the commitment to healing our own selves, tending to our own trauma and tenderness, perhaps with support or help. Work that does not have to be finished or complete in order to make a difference in the lives of the most vulnerable among us. In Wen's words, none of us should ever receive pain or harm or violence. We should not have to be wetlands. We should not have to fight like hell not to pass it on. And in the world we live in, we are hurt. We are in pain. We do survive violence. And so we are called. And so we are called to detoxify, to buffer, to protect, to do whatever we can to act as agents of healing, of transformation, of radical love. May we be the ones we have been waiting for, and may we make it so. Amen. And words of benediction. Only healing heals. And even on our worst days, we can know another world is coming. May we be the ones who do not pass on pain. May we be wetlands. Our worship has ended and our service begins. Go in peace and do the work of love. Blessed be.